The arrow that whistled past Grisha's ear and buried itself in the oak tree behind her carried the scent of human oil and iron. And she knew with absolute certainty that she was going to die on this hillside far from home. Her warband had scattered 3 days ago when the human cavalry caught them in the open plains, and she had been running ever since, her legs burning, her throat raw from thirst, her leather armor torn and bloodied from a dozen near misses. Behind her, she could hear the dogs baying, their handlers shouting coordinates to the archers who followed like patient death itself. Ahead lay only more forest, more territory she did not know, more places where humans might be waiting with steel and hatred. She stumbled over a root and caught herself against a tree, gasping for breath that would not come easily enough. Her hand came away sticky with sap that smelled nothing like the pine forests of her homeland in the northern mountains. Everything here was wrong, foreign, hostile. The warband should never have come this far south, should never have listened to War Chief Gromak's promises of easy plunder and weak resistance. The humans here fought like cornered wolves, and now her people were dead or scattered, and she was alone. Another arrow struck a tree to her left, closer this time. They were hurting her, pushing her toward something. A cliff, perhaps, or a river too wide to cross, or simply more soldiers waiting with pikes and shields. Grisha forced herself to move, pushing off the tree and running deeper into the woods, even though her legs screamed protest. She was 23 summers old, a warrior of the Red Crag clan, and she would not die begging for mercy from humans who saw her kind as nothing more than monsters to be exterminated. The forest opened suddenly onto farmland, and Grisha skidded to a halt at the edge of the tree line, her heart sinking. Fields of wheat stretched before her, golden in the afternoon sun, and beyond them stood a farmhouse of weathered wood with a barn and several outbuildings. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home. If she ran across the open fields, the archers would cut her down before she made it halfway. If she stayed in the forest, the dogs would be on her in minutes. She looked left and right, desperate for another option, and saw nothing but more open farmland in both directions. The human army had driven her into a trap as neat as any she had ever seen. Her fingers tightened on the haft of her war axe, the only weapon she had left after dropping her shield 2 days ago and losing her hunting knife sometime during the night. She would sell her life dearly then, would take as many of them with her as she could before they brought her down. The baying of the dogs grew louder, closer. Grisha sucked in a breath and prepared to charge back into the forest, to meet them head-on rather than wait like prey when a voice called out from the farmhouse. "Inside! Now, before they see you!" She spun toward the sound, axe raised, and saw a human man standing by the barn, waving at her with urgent, frantic gestures. He was tall and lean, dressed in the simple clothes of a farmer, with dark hair and a face that might have been handsome if it were not twisted with fear and desperation. Behind him, the back door of the farmhouse stood open. Every instinct Grisha had screamed at her not to trust this, not to walk into an enclosed space where she could be trapped and killed with ease. But the dogs were so close now she could hear their panting, and the shouts of the soldiers carried clearly through the trees. The human man was running toward his house, looking back at her with an expression she could not quite read. She ran. Her boots pounded across the dirt yard between the barn and the house, and she ducked through the low doorway just as the man slammed it shut behind her. He threw a heavy wooden bar across it, then grabbed her arm and pulled her through a kitchen that smelled of bread and herbs, into a back room that was dark and cool and filled with sacks of grain. A root cellar, she realized. He was pushing aside the sacks to reveal a trapdoor in the floor. "Down," he hissed. "Quickly, they will search the house." Grisha stared at him, her grip tight on her axe. "Why?" "Because I asked. Now move unless you want both of us dead." There was no time to argue. She could hear voices outside now, rough male voices calling to each other, and the frantic barking of the dogs. Grisha dropped through the trapdoor into darkness, landing hard on a dirt floor some 8 feet below. A moment later, the human climbed down after her, pulling the trapdoor closed above them and plunging them into absolute blackness. They stood in silence, breathing hard, while footsteps thudded across the floor above. Grisha's heart hammered against her ribs. She could smell the human in the darkness, could hear his quick, shallow breaths, could probably kill him with a single swing of her axe if she chose to. But he had helped her, had hidden her, and she did not understand why. "Open up. In the name of Captain Harrow and the King's army." The voice was muffled but clear enough. Above them, more footsteps, heavier now, accompanied by the jingle of mail and weapons. The human beside her in the darkness did not move, did not speak. His breathing began to slow, to steady, as if he were deliberately calming himself. "I am coming, she heard him call, his voice sounding different, annoyed rather than afraid. "No need to break my door down." She heard him climb a ladder she had not noticed in the darkness, heard a different trapdoor open somewhere else in the house. His footsteps receded, and then there were voices, questions barked in sharp military tones. "Have you seen an orc? Female, green skin, leather armor, carrying weapons. She came this way." "An orc?" The farmer's voice held exactly the right note of surprise and worry. "Here, gods above, no. I have been in the back fields all morning, just came in to eat. Is there truly an orc nearby? A straggler from the Warband we scattered. Dangerous. We tracked her to your property." "I saw nothing, sir. You are welcome to search, of course. I want no orc hiding in my barn or fields." More footsteps, many of them now, spreading through the house. Grisha pressed herself against the cold dirt wall of the root cellar and forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly. Her orc eyes could see fairly well in the dark, better than human eyes, and she took stock of her surroundings. The cellar was perhaps 10 feet square, the walls lined with wooden shelves that held preserves in clay jars, dried herbs hanging in bundles, and what looked like stored vegetables. The ladder the farmer had used led up to a different trapdoor, probably in a closet or pantry somewhere that the soldiers would not think to search carefully. Time stretched. She heard the soldiers moving through the house, heard them go outside to search the barn and outbuildings. The dogs barked and whined, confused by the multiple scents. At one point, someone walked directly over the hidden trapdoor above her head, so close she could hear the creak of leather boots, but they did not stop, did not search beneath the grain sacks. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, she heard the captain's voice again. "Nothing here." The dogs lost the scent at the tree line. She must have doubled back, or gone to ground somewhere in the forest, another voice suggested. Possible. "We will search the woods again, sweep back toward the river. You, farmer, if you see anything, any sign of the orc, you sound the alarm immediately. Ring your bell, light a signal fire, anything. Do not try to fight her yourself. These creatures are vicious." "Of course, sir, you can count on me." More footsteps, receding now. The jingle of armor and weapons fading. Grisha remained motionless, certain this was a trick, that they were waiting for her to emerge. But the minutes continued to pass, and the house grew quiet. And eventually she heard the distant sound of horses and men moving away across the fields. The trapdoor above her opened, and pale light filtered down. The farmer's face appeared, silhouetted against the glow. "They are gone," he said quietly. "You can come up, but stay away from the windows." Grisha climbed the ladder slowly, her axe in one hand, her muscles screaming from the exertion of the past 3 days. She emerged into what appeared to be a storage pantry, neat and organized, and followed the farmer back into the kitchen. Late afternoon, sunlight streamed through the windows, making her blink after the darkness of the cellar. The farmer was pouring water from a pitcher into a wooden cup, and he held it out to her without meeting her eyes. "You look half dead. Drink." Grisha took the cup warily, sniffed the water, then drank it down in 3 long swallows. It was cold and clean and tasted better than anything she could remember. The farmer refilled the cup without being asked, and she drank that too, more slowly this time. "Why?" she asked finally, her voice rough from thirst and exhaustion. The farmer set the pitcher down and leaned against the table, his arms crossed. He was looking at her now, his eyes a deep brown that reminded her of rich soil. "Why did I hide you?" "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an expression she could not read. Not fear exactly, though there was wariness there. Not hatred, though she was accustomed to seeing that in human faces. Something else, something complicated. "Because they would have killed you," he said finally, "and I have seen enough killing. I am your enemy. My Warband raided these lands." "Did you?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Did you personally burn any farms, kill any families?" Grisha met his gaze and did not look away. "No, we were scouts ranging ahead of the main force. We never reached any settlements before your cavalry found us." "Then you are not my enemy. You are just someone who made bad choices and got unlucky." He pushed away from the table and moved to the windows, checking the fields beyond. "The soldiers will not come back tonight, but they will patrol the area for days. You cannot leave until they stop searching. You would keep me here." "Hide me. I do not see another option unless you want to die." He looked back at her, and there was something weary in his expression, something old despite the fact that he could not have been more than 30 summers. "I am Isaac Yardley. This is my farm. You are welcome to stay until it is safe to leave." Grisha stared at him, trying to understand this human who defied every expectation she had. "I am Grisha, of the Red Crag clan." "Well met, Grisha of the Red Crag clan." Isaac's mouth twisted in something that was not quite a smile. "I apologize for the accommodations, but you will need to sleep in the root cellar. If anyone comes by unexpectedly, I can say I am storing extra grain down there and refuse entry on grounds of property rights. Most of my neighbors will accept that. You have neighbors nearby." "A few miles in each direction. We are on the frontier here, but not completely isolated." He moved to the pantry and began pulling out food, bread and cheese and dried meat. "You must be starving. Eat, then get some rest. We will figure out the rest tomorrow." Grisha wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain some dignity and independence, but her stomach was a knot of hunger so intense it hurt. She sat at the table and ate what he offered, forcing herself to go slowly even though she wanted to devour everything in sight. Isaac moved around the kitchen, tidying things that did not need tidying, clearly uncomfortable with her presence but trying not to show it. "You said you have seen enough killing," Grisha said between bites. "You were a soldier." Isaac's hand stilled on the rag he was using to wipe down the counter. 5 years with the King's 3rd Infantry. I mustered out 2 years ago and bought this farm with my service pay. But you did not report me to your former brothers in arms. They are not my brothers anymore. I left that life behind." His voice was flat, final, a door closing on a conversation he did not want to have. Grisha nodded and asked no more questions. She understood the desire to escape the past, to become someone different. She finished eating, and Isaac led her back down into the root cellar, this time bringing a lantern that he hung from a hook in the ceiling, along with blankets and a straw mattress that he must have pulled from somewhere. "It is not much," he said, "but it is dry and relatively warm. I will bring you meals and water. There is a chamber pot in the corner behind that shelf. Try not to make noise during the day in case anyone comes by, but you should be safe here." "Isaac," Grisha said, and he paused at the bottom of the ladder looking back at her. "Thank you. I owe you my life." He shook his head. "You owe me nothing. Just do not make me regret this." Then he was gone, climbing back up and closing the trapdoor, and Grisha was alone in the lamplight with her thoughts and her exhaustion. She lay down on the straw mattress, her axe within easy reach, and told herself she would only rest for a moment. But sleep took her almost immediately, dragging her down into darkness deeper than any cellar. She woke to the sound of the trapdoor opening and sat bolt upright, axe in hand, before she remembered where she was. Pale morning light filtered down, and Isaac descended the ladder with a tray of food and a fresh pitcher of water. "Easy," he said, eyeing the axe. "Just bringing breakfast." Grisha lowered the weapon and rubbed her eyes. Every muscle in her body ached, but it was the good ache of healing rather than the sharp pain of fresh injury. "What time is it?" "Mid-morning. I let you sleep. You looked like you needed it." He set the tray on an overturned crate that served as a makeshift table. "There is porridge with honey, fresh bread, and some apples from the orchard. Eat what you can." He turned to leave, but Grisha stopped him with a question. "Have the soldiers returned?" "No." "But I saw a patrol pass on the road at dawn. They are still searching." He paused, then added, "It will likely be at least a week before they give up and move on. Orc raids have them spooked, and they want to prove they are doing their duty." "A week." Grisha looked around the small cellar, trying to imagine spending 7 days in this confined space. "I will go mad down here. At night, you can come up into the house. The windows face the fields, not the road, and no one will see. But during the day, you need to stay hidden." Isaac met her eyes, and there was something like sympathy there. "I know it is not ideal, but it is better than being dead." He left before she could respond, and Grisha ate her breakfast in silence, thinking about the strange human who had saved her life. Everything she had been taught about humans said they were cruel, treacherous, weak in spirit if strong in numbers. But Isaac was none of those things, or at least, he did not seem to be. He was risking his own life to shelter her, and she could not understand why. The day passed slowly. Grisha did exercises in the limited space, maintaining her strength and flexibility as best she could. She examined every item in the root cellar, reading the labels on the preserves when she could, studying the herbs. She slept in short bursts, her body still recovering from the ordeal of the chase. And she thought about home, about the northern mountains she would probably never see again, about her clan and whether any of them had survived. When the trapdoor opened again, it was full dark outside, and Isaac brought not just dinner but also a thick book. "I thought you might want something to read," he said, setting the book on the crate beside the food tray. "It is just an old history text, but it will pass the time." Grisha picked up the book and looked at him with surprise. "You assume I can read, can you?" "Yes. My father was a lore keeper. He taught all his children to read and write in both Orcish and Common." She ran her fingers over the worn leather cover. "Thank you." Isaac nodded, then hesitated at the base of the ladder. "You can come up into the house now if you want. Stretch your legs. Just keep away from the windows and keep your voice down." Grisha followed him up into the darkened house, grateful for the chance to stand fully upright and move freely. Isaac had lit a fire in the hearth, and the main room was warm and inviting, furnished simply but comfortably. She moved to the fire and stood before it, letting the heat soak into her bones. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. "Almost 2 years. I bought the land from a family that was moving back east, closer to the capital." They wanted to get away from the frontier, said it was too dangerous with orc raids increasing. He poured himself a drink from a bottle on the shelf, something amber that smelled of grain alcohol. They were probably right. And yet you stayed. I wanted the isolation. I wanted somewhere quiet, away from people and their wars and their endless conflicts. He took a sip of the drink and stared into the fire. I suppose that did not work out as planned. Grisha smiled slightly, her tusks glinting in the firelight. No, it seems the war followed you. They stood in silence for a while, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the distant cry of a night bird outside. It was oddly peaceful, domestic in a way that Grisha had never experienced. Her clan lived in communal lodges in the mountains, always surrounded by the noise and bustle of extended family, always preparing for the next hunt or the next battle. This quiet solitude was alien to her, but not unpleasant. "Why did you leave the army?" she asked finally. Isaac was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. When he spoke, his voice was low and distant. "I killed a lot of people in those 5 years. Some of them deserved it, some of them did not. After a while, I could not tell the difference anymore, and that scared me more than any battle ever did." He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I did not want to become someone who killed without thinking, without feeling, so I left. That takes courage. Or cowardice, depending on who you ask." "No," Grisha said firmly. "Courage. It is easy to keep fighting when everyone around you tells you it is right and necessary. It is hard to walk away and choose a different path." Isaac studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, some of the wariness easing. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know. A monster, I suppose. That is what they told us in the army. That orcs were savage beasts, barely intelligent, driven only by bloodlust and greed." He shook his head. "But you are just a person. Scared, tired, trying to survive, same as anyone. Your people would kill me for what I am, regardless of whether I have done them any wrong," Grisha said. "My people would kill you for helping me, for showing mercy to a human. We are both traitors now, in a sense. Then I suppose we are in this together." Isaac raised his cup in a slight salute. "To unlikely allies." Grisha had no cup to raise, but she nodded in acknowledgement. "To surviving." Over the next several days, a routine developed. Grisha spent the daylight hours in the root cellar, reading the history book Isaac had given her and doing what exercises she could in the confined space. Isaac worked his farm, tending the fields and animals, living the life of a solitary farmer. But when darkness fell, he would come to release her, and they would spend the evening hours together in the main room of the house, talking by firelight or sitting in companionable silence. Grisha learned that Isaac had grown up the youngest of 4 sons in a family of blacksmiths, that he had joined the army to escape the expectation that he would follow his father's trade, that he had no living family left after a plague swept through his hometown 3 years prior. He learned that Grisha was the middle child of 7, that she had trained as a warrior from age 12, that her warband had been formed only 2 months ago, and this was her first real campaign beyond the borders of orc territory. "We were told the human lands were there for the taking," she explained one night, her voice bitter. "War Chief Gramak said your armies were stretched thin fighting wars in the east, that the frontier settlements were undefended and ripe for plunder. He said we would be heroes, that we would return with wealth and glory." "But you did not believe him," Isaac said. "I wanted to, but my father taught me to question, to think for myself, and the whole plan seemed too simple, too easy. Humans do not leave their borders undefended, no matter what wars they fight elsewhere." She stared into the fire, her green skin glowing in the warm light. "I was right to doubt, but I was too much of a coward to speak up, to challenge the warchief's authority. So I marched with the warband, and now most of them are dead. That does not make you a coward, it makes you a survivor. In my culture there is not always a difference. Isaac poured her a drink, the same grain alcohol he favored, and she accepted it gratefully. The liquor burned going down but left a pleasant warmth in her stomach. They sat in silence for a while, and Grisha found herself noticing small things about Isaac that she had not paid attention to before. The way his hands moved with unconscious grace, the legacy of his blacksmith upbringing. The slight scar above his left eyebrow that suggested an old wound. The way he smiled rarely but genuinely, usually at some small absurdity in one of the stories they shared. He was handsome, she realized, by the standards of humans or orcs. And he was kind, which was rarer than handsomeness in her experience. The thought unsettled her, and she pushed it away, reminding herself that she was an enemy soldier hiding in his home, that any warmth between them was born of necessity and proximity, nothing more. On the 6th day of her hiding, Isaac came down to the root cellar in mid-afternoon, his face grim. "Soldiers on the road," he said quietly. "Not a patrol. A full company, maybe 40 men, and they are stopping at every farm. I think they are doing a thorough search of the area." Grisha stood, her heart hammering. "They will search here. Yes, and they will be more thorough than last time." Isaac ran a hand through his hair, thinking fast. The root cellar will not fool them if they are doing a proper search. They will check the floorboards, sound them out, find the hidden trapdoor. Then I must run, lead them away from here before they connect you to my escape. You would not make it 50 yards in daylight. They have mounted scouts watching the fields. Isaac's jaw tightened with decision. "There is another way, but you will have to trust me completely. Tell me." "My wife died a year and a half ago. Fever. The neighbors know I was married, know she is gone, but they do not know all the details, and they are too polite to ask too many questions." He met her eyes, and she could see the fear there, carefully controlled but real. "If they come, you are my new wife. A woman I met during my army service in the border territories. You keep your face covered, claim shyness around strangers, let me do the talking." Grisha stared at him. "They will never believe I am human. My skin, my tusks, my ears. Not human, no, but there are other races on the frontier. Half-orcs born of mixed unions who look close enough to pass if no one looks too carefully. Your skin is green, but you could claim illness, some strange affliction from the border swamps. Your tusks are small enough to hide if you keep your mouth mostly closed. Your ears can be covered by a hood or headscarf." He was speaking quickly now, working through the logistics. "It is a desperate plan, and it might not work, but it has a better chance than you hiding in a cellar they will definitely search." Grisha wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was madness, but she could hear the sound of horses on the road now, the jingle of harness and armor. There was no time for a better plan. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Isaac moved fast, pulling her up the ladder and into the house. He dragged out a trunk from his bedroom and threw it open, revealing women's clothing inside, carefully folded and preserved. His dead wife's clothes, Grisha realized, and felt a pang of guilt at the violation. "Put these on. The blue dress, the one with long sleeves, and the headscarf. Hurry." Grisha stripped out of her leather armor and torn traveling clothes, painfully aware of Isaac's presence even though he had turned his back to give her privacy. The dress was too small in the shoulders and too loose in the waist, but it fit well enough. She wrapped the headscarf around her head, covering her pointed ears and most of her face, leaving only her eyes visible. "Your axe, hide it in the bedroom, under the bed." Isaac was tidying the main room now, hiding any evidence of her true nature. "When they come, stay in the kitchen." Be busy with cooking or cleaning. Do not speak unless directly addressed, and then keep your answers short. Let them think you are shy or simple-minded or grieving, whatever makes them lose interest fastest. There was a knock at the door, hard and authoritative. Isaac Yardley. Open in the name of the king's army. Isaac took a deep breath, squeezed Grisha's shoulder once in reassurance, then went to answer the door. Grisha moved quickly to the kitchen and began slicing vegetables for a stew, keeping her head down, her hands busy, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. She heard the door open, heard Isaac's voice, calm and polite. "Captain, what can I do for you?" "We are conducting another search of all properties in this area. The orc we were tracking has not been found, and Command believes she may have gone to ground somewhere nearby. We need to search your home and buildings. Of course, you are welcome to search anywhere you need." "My wife and I have nothing to hide." There was a pause, and Grisha could imagine the surprise on the captain's face. "Your wife? I was told you lived alone." "I did, until 2 months ago. I remarried. Mara is from the border territories near the Greyfell swamp. We met during my army service, stayed in touch through letters, and when she wrote that she was widowed and needed a home, I offered her one." Isaac's voice was smooth, the lie flowing naturally. "She is shy around strangers, still adjusting to life out here. The isolation suits her." Footsteps in the house now, heavy boots on the wooden floor. Grisha kept her eyes on the vegetables she was cutting, her hands steady despite the fear coursing through her. She could feel eyes on her, scrutinizing, suspicious. "Mara," Isaac said, his voice gentle. "These soldiers need to search the house. It is all right, just keep working." She nodded without looking up, and the footsteps moved away, spreading through the house. She could hear them opening doors, moving furniture, checking every corner and crevice. They were thorough, professional, exactly what Isaac had predicted. One soldier came into the kitchen, a young man with a scarred face and watchful eyes. He studied her for a long moment, and Grisha forced herself to continue cutting vegetables, to act as though his presence meant nothing. "You are from the Greyfell territories?" he asked. Grisha nodded, still not looking up. Strange accent then. "You do not sound like the marsh folk." "She does not speak much," Isaac said quickly, appearing in the doorway. "Trauma from the wars. A raiding party killed her first husband and burned her village. She has been through hell." The soldier's expression softened slightly. "I am sorry to hear that. Too many have suffered on the frontier." He turned back to Grisha. "Still, I would like to see your face. Protocol, you understand." Grisha's hand stilled on the knife. This was it, the moment where the charade would either hold or collapse. She set down the knife and slowly reached up to lower the headscarf, revealing her face but keeping her mouth closed, her lips pressed together to hide her tusks. The soldier stared at her, his eyes narrowing. Her green skin was obvious in the daylight streaming through the kitchen window, and there was no way to hide it. She watched him process what he was seeing, watched suspicion bloom in his face. "Her skin," he said, looking at Isaac. "What is wrong with her skin?" "Swamp fever," Isaac said, his voice sad and tired. "She contracted it during the wars. The healers say it is not contagious, but it changed her skin pigmentation, made it turn this sickly green color. It is why she covers herself, why she hides. People stare. People say cruel things." The soldier looked back at Grisha, and she saw pity replace suspicion in his eyes. She lowered her gaze, playing the part of a woman ashamed of her affliction, and pulled the headscarf back up to cover her face. "I am sorry," the soldier said, and he sounded like he meant it. "That is a cruel fate." He left the kitchen, and Grisha heard him report to his captain in the main room. "Nothing here, sir, just the farmer and his wife. She is sick, poor woman. Swamp fever looks like. You checked everywhere." The cellar, the barn, the outbuildings. Yes, sir. All clear. More discussion, too low for Grisha to hear clearly, and then the captain's voice again, louder now, addressing Isaac. We apologize for the intrusion. If you see anything suspicious, you know what to do. Of course, Captain. I hope you find the orc soon. My wife is frightened enough without knowing there is a monster lurking nearby. The soldiers left, and Grisha waited, frozen, until she heard the sound of horses moving away down the road. Then her legs gave out and she sank to the floor, her whole body shaking with reaction. Isaac was there immediately, kneeling beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You are safe," he said. "They are gone. You did perfectly." "They almost saw," she whispered. "That soldier almost knew." "But he did not. You convinced him. We convinced him." Isaac helped her to her feet and guided her to a chair. "You need to sit, breathe, it is over." Grisha sat and pulled off the headscarf, gulping air, her hands still trembling. Isaac brought her water and then the grain alcohol, and she drank both gratefully. Slowly her heartbeat returned to normal and the shaking subsided. "That was too close," she said finally. "Yes, but it worked." Isaac sat across from her, his own hands shaking slightly now that the danger had passed. "They will not come back. They searched thoroughly and found nothing. As far as the army is concerned, you were never here." Grisha looked at him, this human who had just lied to his own people to protect her, who had given her his dead wife's clothes, and named her his wife in front of soldiers who could have him executed for treason. "Why are you doing this? Why risk everything for me?" Isaac was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because I am tired of death, tired of violence, tired of being part of a world where people kill each other over lines on a map and differences in skin color." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "You are a person, Grisha. Not a monster, not an enemy, just a person who deserves a chance to live. If I can give you that chance, then maybe some of the things I have done, the people I have killed, maybe they matter a little less. Maybe I can forgive myself a little." Grisha felt something shift in her chest, some wall that had been firmly in place beginning to crack. She had not expected this, had not been prepared to feel anything for this human beyond gratitude for her survival. But there was something in his eyes, something honest and raw and deeply lonely that called to something in her own heart. "You are a good man, Isaac Yardley," she said quietly. "I am trying to be. That is all any of us can do." That night Grisha did not return to the root cellar. It seemed pointless now, after the soldiers had searched and found nothing. She slept instead on the small couch in the main room, wrapped in blankets, with the fire burning low in the hearth. Isaac had offered her his bed, but she refused, unwilling to take any more from him than she already had. She woke in the deep hours of the night to find Isaac sitting by the fire, unable to sleep, staring into the dying embers. She watched him for a while in silence, noting the tension in his shoulders, the tired lines around his eyes. "You cannot sleep?" she asked softly. He startled slightly, then shook his head. "Too much thinking, too many what-ifs." Grisha sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "Come sit with me. Tell me what you are thinking." Isaac hesitated, then moved to sit on the other end of the couch, maintaining a careful distance. "I was thinking about what happens next. The soldiers will not come back, but you still cannot leave. Not yet. The patrols will continue for at least another week, maybe two. And even when they stop, where will you go? Your warband is scattered or dead. You cannot return to your clan without facing questions about why you survived when so many others did not." "You are right," Grisha admitted. "I have nowhere to go. I am essentially an exile." "You could stay here," Isaac said, the words coming out in a rush as if he had been holding them back. "Not in the cellar, but here in the house. We already told the soldiers you are my wife. If anyone asks, we continue that story. You help with the farm, I teach you what you need to know, and we build a life here together." Grisha stared at him, shocked. "You would let me stay? Permanently?" "I know it is a strange offer. We barely know each other. But I could use the help, honestly. This farm is too much for one person to manage well, and the loneliness is harder than I expected." He met her eyes, and there was something vulnerable in his expression. "And I think maybe you could use a home. A place where you do not have to be a warrior, where you can just be yourself. People will suspect. They will wonder about me, about my appearance. Let them wonder. We are on the frontier. Strange things happen here all the time. As long as you do not cause trouble and we keep to ourselves, most people will leave us alone." Isaac paused, then added quietly, "And I promise you, I do not expect anything from you except help with the farm. This would be a partnership, an arrangement of convenience, nothing more. You would have your own space, your own life. I am not asking you to be a real wife, just to pretend when necessary." Grisha considered the offer, turning it over in her mind. Everything he said made sense, but there was a danger here that he seemed not to recognize. She was already feeling things for him that she should not feel, already noticing the way her heart beat faster when he smiled at her, already looking forward to their evening conversations by the fire. If she stayed, if she lived here as his pretend wife, those feelings would only grow stronger. And that was a complication neither of them needed. But what was the alternative? She had no home, no clan, no future beyond running and hiding until someone eventually caught and killed her. At least here, with Isaac, she had a chance at something resembling a life. "I will stay," she said finally, "for as long as you will have me, and I will earn my keep, I promise you. I may not know much about farming, but I am strong and I learn quickly." Isaac smiled, genuine and warm. "Then welcome home, Grisha of the Red Crag clan, or should I say Mara Yardley?" She laughed, surprised by the sound. It had been so long since she had laughed. "I suppose I am Mara now, at least to the outside world. It will take some getting used to. For both of us," Isaac agreed. The next morning began Grisha's education in the life of a frontier farmer. Isaac woke her at dawn, and they worked through the morning, tending to the small flock of chickens, collecting eggs, feeding the 2 dairy cows and the pig that lived in the barn. He showed her how to milk the cows, a skill that seemed simple but proved frustratingly difficult until she got the rhythm of it. He taught her about the vegetable garden, which plants needed water and which needed to be left alone, how to identify weeds and pull them without disturbing the crops. The work was hard and physical, but Grisha found she enjoyed it. There was something satisfying about working with her hands to create and nurture life, rather than to destroy it. And she liked working alongside Isaac, liked the easy way they moved around each other as the days passed and they fell into a rhythm. In the afternoons, when the hottest work was done, Isaac taught her other things. How to bake bread, mixing the dough and kneading it until it was smooth and elastic. How to preserve vegetables for the winter, packing them in salt or vinegar. How to mend clothes and repair tools, skills that every farmer needed. Grisha absorbed it all hungrily, glad to be learning something practical and peaceful after a lifetime of training for war. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk, or sometimes just exist in comfortable silence. Grisha read more books from Isaac's small collection, and she told him stories from her childhood in the northern mountains, tales of great hunts and legendary warriors, of the harsh beauty of winter in the high peaks. Isaac told her about his time in the army, the places he had seen and the battles he had fought, though he rarely spoke of the actual fighting. Those memories were too dark, too heavy, and Grisha understood the desire to keep them locked away. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2 months. The patrols dwindled and eventually stopped as the army gave up the search for the missing orc and turned their attention to other threats. Summer faded into autumn, and the fields turned gold and brown, the air crisp and cool. Grisha and Isaac worked to bring in the harvest, long days of cutting wheat and gathering vegetables, storing everything away for the winter to come. The neighboring farmers began to stop by occasionally, curious about Isaac's new wife. Grisha played her role carefully, staying quiet and shy, keeping her face mostly covered, letting Isaac do the talking. Most people accepted the story without question, though she saw doubt and suspicion in a few eyes. But Isaac was respected in the community, a veteran who kept to himself and caused no trouble, and most people were willing to extend that respect to his wife as well. One evening in late autumn, after a long day of work, Isaac built up the fire and poured them both drinks. They sat on the couch together, closer than they once had, the careful distance between them having eroded gradually over the months. "I have been thinking," Isaac said, "about next spring. If we plant more acres of wheat and maybe add some barley, we could increase the harvest significantly. But it would mean more work, and we would need to hire help during planting and harvest season." "Could we afford that?" Grisha asked. "I think so. The harvest was good this year, better than I expected, and with two of us working the land, we have been able to keep costs down." He looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "This is starting to feel like a real farm, like a real home." "It is a real home," Grisha said softly. "The first real home I have had since I left my clan." Isaac nodded, then seemed to struggle with something he wanted to say. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet. "I wanted to thank you for staying, for helping build this with me. I did not realize how much I needed the companionship, how much easier everything would be with someone to share the work and the days. You have made this place feel alive again." Grisha felt her heart clench. "I should be thanking you. You saved my life, gave me a home when I had nothing. I owe you everything." "You owe me nothing. You have more than earned your place here." Isaac turned to face her more fully, and there was something intense in his eyes, something that made Grisha's breath catch. "Grisha, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I think I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, shocking and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Grisha stared at him, her mind racing, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Isaac," she whispered, but he continued before she could say more. "I know this complicates things. I know we agreed this was just an arrangement, a partnership of convenience. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that for me. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is seeing you, talking to you, working beside you. When I go to sleep at night, I wish you were there beside me instead of in the other room. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be better than I am." He took a breath, his hands trembling slightly. "I do not expect you to feel the same way. And if you do not, we can pretend I never said anything, can go back to how things were. But I needed you to know the truth." Grisha felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the honesty and vulnerability in his words. She reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his, feeling the calluses on his palm that matched her own. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I have been falling in love with you since the night you hid me from the soldiers, since the morning you taught me to milk the cows and laughed when I nearly kicked over the bucket. I tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it was just gratitude or proximity or loneliness. But it is more than that. It is you, Isaac. The man you are, the kindness in your heart, the way you see me as a person and not a monster. I love you." Isaac's face transformed, joy and relief and love shining in his eyes. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Grisha did not pull away. She met him halfway, and their lips touched in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and perfect. Her tusks made it slightly awkward, but they adjusted, learning the shape of each other, and the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent and necessary. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I want this to be real," he said. "Not pretend, not for the neighbors, but real. I want you to truly be my wife in all the ways that matter." "Yes," Grisha said simply. "Yes to all of it." They made love that night in front of the fire, learning each other's bodies with the same patience and care they had learned each other's minds and hearts. It was tender and passionate and occasionally clumsy in the way of new lovers, but it was perfect because it was them, because it was real and honest and born of genuine love. Afterward, they lay wrapped in blankets on the floor, the fire crackling beside them, and Grisha felt a peace she had never known. She was home, truly home, in a way that had nothing to do with geography and everything to do with the man whose arms held her close. "We should make it official," Isaac said, his voice drowsy and content. "Have a proper ceremony, even if it is just the two of us. Make vows before whatever gods we believe in." "I would like that," Grisha agreed. "Though we should wait until spring, I think. Give the neighbors time to become more accustomed to my presence, so that no one thinks it's strange when we have a small private ceremony. Spring it is, then." Isaac pressed a kiss to the top of her head, his hand stroking her hair. "My wife, in truth as well as in name." "Your wife," Grisha repeated, testing out the words, finding she liked the way they sounded. "And you are my husband." "I am, now and always." Winter came to the frontier, harsh and cold, blanketing the farm in snow. Grisha and Isaac spent the long, dark months working on indoor tasks, repairing equipment, sewing clothes, planning for the spring planting. They slept in the same bed now, in the room that had once belonged to Isaac alone, and woke each morning tangled together, warm despite the chill in the air. Grisha told Isaac more about orc culture, about the complex system of clans and honor codes that governed her people. She taught him some words in the orcish language, laughing at his pronunciation but praising his effort. Isaac told her more about his family, about growing up in the city, about the things he missed and the things he did not. They learned each other's pasts, their hopes and fears and dreams, weaving their lives together one story at a time. In late winter, a traveling priest passed through the area, offering blessings and performing ceremonies for those who needed them. Isaac approached him about a marriage ceremony, and the priest agreed, though he looked askance at Grisha with her covered face and strange appearance. But gold was gold, and he performed a simple ceremony in the farmhouse, with no witnesses except the wind howling outside and the fire burning in the hearth. Grisha and Isaac spoke their vows to each other, promising love and loyalty, promising to face whatever challenges came together, promising to build a life and maybe, someday, a family. The priest blessed their union with a prayer to the human gods, and Grisha added a quiet prayer to the orc ancestors, asking for their approval even though she knew they would never give it. When the priest left, Grisha removed her headscarf and let Isaac see her fully in the daylight, every green inch of her skin, every sharp point of her tusks, every exotic curve of her pointed ears. He looked at her with such love and desire that she felt beautiful, truly beautiful for the first time in her life. "You are stunning," he said, pulling her close. "How did I get so lucky?" "I think we both got lucky," Grisha replied, then kissed him deeply, tasting snow and happiness on his lips. Spring came slowly, the snow melting to reveal the dark earth beneath. Grisha and Isaac prepared the fields for planting, working together with the ease of long practice, moving in sync like a single organism with two bodies. The neighboring farmers stopped by occasionally to offer advice or borrow tools, and slowly, gradually, they began to accept Grisha's presence. Some remained suspicious, but most came to see her as simply Isaac's strange but hard-working wife, a woman who had suffered some unnamed tragedy and deserved their pity more than their fear. In late spring, a merchant caravan passed through the area, and Isaac went to trade some of their surplus harvest for goods they needed. He returned with flour and salt and bolts of cloth, but also with news that made Grisha's blood run cold. "The war is over," he said, his face grave. The Orc warchief, Gramek, was killed in battle 6 months ago. Without his leadership, the Warband fractured and scattered. The king's army pushed them back across the northern border and established a peace treaty with the Orc clans. There will be no more raids, no more war, at least not for now. Grisha sat down heavily, processing this information. "My people are at peace with yours. For the moment, yes. The treaty is fragile, but it holds. There are even talks of establishing trade routes, of allowing limited travel between human and Orc territories." Isaac knelt beside her, taking her hands. "Grisha, this means you could go home if you wanted. Return to your clan, see your family again. The treaty includes provisions for refugees and separated families." Grisha looked at him, at this man she loved more than anything, and shook her head slowly. "I am home. This is my home here with you. My clan would not welcome me back, not after I failed to return with the Warband, not after I survived when so many died. And even if they would, I do not want to leave. Everything I want, everything I need is right here." Relief flooded Isaac's face, though he tried to hide it. "Are you certain? I do not want you to have regrets. I am certain. You are my family now. This farm, this life we have built together, this is where I belong." She squeezed his hands, her tusks glinting as she smiled. "Though perhaps, someday, we could travel north. I would like you to see the mountains where I grew up, would like to show you the beauty of my homeland even if I can never return there to live." "Someday," Isaac agreed. "When the treaty is stronger, when it is safer, I would like that very much." Summer came in full force, hot and bright, and the crops grew tall in the fields. Grisha worked beside Isaac from dawn until dusk, and in the evenings they would sit together on the porch he had built, watching the sun set over the golden wheat and talking about nothing and everything. She had never been happier, had never imagined that life could be this peaceful, this full of simple joys and quiet contentment. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch with the cicadas singing in the warm darkness, Grisha turned to Isaac with something important to say. "I am with child," she said simply. Isaac froze, his cup of cider halfway to his lips. "What? I am pregnant. About 3 months along, I think. I was not certain until recently, but now there is no doubt." Grisha placed a hand on her belly, which showed no sign of swelling yet but would soon. "We are going to have a baby." Isaac set down his cup very carefully, as if afraid his shaking hands would drop it. "A baby, we are going to have a baby." "Yes. Are you happy?" Grisha asked, suddenly uncertain. They had never discussed children, had never planned for this, and she realized with a jolt of fear that he might not want this complication in their carefully built life. But Isaac was laughing, a sound of pure joy, and then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Happy, I am ecstatic. Terrified but ecstatic. Grisha, this is wonderful, this is a miracle." Grisha felt tears of relief and happiness slide down her cheeks. "I was afraid you would not want this. Not want this, not want a child with the woman I love more than life itself." Isaac pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining with tears of his own. "You have given me everything. A home, a purpose, love, and now a family. How could I not want this?" They held each other as the stars came out overhead, and Grisha felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She was no longer Grisha of the Red Crag clan, warrior and scout. She was Mara Yardley, farmer's wife, soon to be mother. And she had never been more herself, more complete, more exactly where she was meant to be. The pregnancy was difficult at times. Grisha's orcish constitution meant she was stronger and recovered faster than a human woman might, but there were complications that came from carrying a child of mixed heritage. Isaac fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest more and work less, and Grisha bore his worry with patience and love because she knew it came from a place of caring. In midwinter, on a night when the snow fell thick and soft outside, Grisha went into labor. Isaac had arranged for a midwife from the nearest town, a practical woman named Sarah who had delivered hundreds of babies, and asked no questions about Grisha's appearance or the strange color of her skin. Sarah guided them through the long hours of labor with calm efficiency, and just before dawn, their daughter was born. She was perfect. Small and wrinkled and screaming with healthy lungs, her skin a pale green that was lighter than Grisha's but darker than Isaac's tan, her ears just slightly pointed, her mouth free of tusks but her jaw strong and square. She had Isaac's dark hair and Grisha's golden eyes, and she was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. "What should we name her?" Isaac asked, cradling his daughter with the careful reverence of a new father. Grisha thought for a moment, then smiled. "Elena." "It is a human name, but it sounds a bit like the orcish word for light. She is the light of both our peoples, the proof that they can coexist in peace." "Elena Yardley," Isaac said, testing it out. "It is perfect. She is perfect." Sarah the midwife left after ensuring both mother and child were healthy, and Grisha and Isaac were left alone with their daughter. They took turns holding her, marveling at her tiny fingers and toes, the way she would grasp their fingers with surprising strength, the soft sound she made as she nursed. "She will have a good life," Grisha said as she fed Elena, Isaac sitting beside them with his arm around her shoulders. "Better than either of us had. She will grow up knowing love and peace, knowing that she is wanted and cherished. She will never have to choose between being orc or human because she is both, and that is beautiful." "We will protect her," Isaac said fiercely. "From anyone who would judge her or hurt her or make her feel like she is less than perfect exactly as she is." "Yes," Grisha agreed. "Together, we will make sure she knows she is loved always." The winter passed, and spring came again, bringing with it new growth and new hope. Elena thrived, growing bigger and stronger each day, her laugh like music in the farmhouse. The neighbors who stopped by admired the baby, and if they noticed her unusual appearance, they said nothing. After all, she was the child of Isaac the veteran and his strange foreign wife, and whatever differences she had were just the result of her mother's affliction, nothing more. As Elena grew, so did the farm. Isaac and Grisha worked harder than ever, expanding their fields, adding more animals, building a life that would support their growing family. They talked sometimes about having more children, but for now they were content with Elena, with watching her learn to crawl and then to walk, with hearing her first words in a mix of common and orcish. Years passed. Elena grew into a bright, curious child with her mother's strength and her father's kindness. She helped with the farm chores as soon as she was able, learning to feed the chickens and gather eggs, to help in the garden and play in the fields. She was fearless and joyful, and she filled the farmhouse with laughter and life. Grisha and Isaac grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They had built something real and lasting, a family and a home that stood as testament to the fact that love could bridge any divide, could overcome any prejudice or hatred. They had faced down armies and social taboos and their own fears, and they had won. On a warm summer evening, when Alina was 5 years old, the three of them sat on the porch watching the sunset. Alina was nestled between her parents, telling them a rambling story about the chickens in the barnyard, her hands gesturing wildly to emphasize the drama. Isaac and Grisha listened with smiles, their hands linked behind their daughter's back, and Grisha felt a profound sense of gratitude for this life she had never expected to have. "Mama," Alina said suddenly, looking up at her with those golden eyes that were so like her own. "Why is your skin green?" Grisha and Isaac exchanged a look, having known this question would come eventually. They had agreed long ago to always tell Alina the truth, as much of it as she could understand at her age. "Because I am an orc," Grisha said simply. "I come from people who live in the northern mountains far away from here. My skin is green because that is how the gods made my people." Alina considered this, her face scrunched up in thought. "And Papa is human, so his skin is different." "That is right. And you are both, which makes you very special. You have the best of both worlds." "I am special," Alina repeated, pleased with this information. Then she shrugged, as if the differences in their appearances were the most natural thing in the world, and went back to her story about the chickens. Isaac laughed softly and pulled both his girls close. Out of the mouths of babes, if only the rest of the world could see things so simply. "Someday they will," Grisha said with quiet conviction. "Someday, children like Alina will not be unusual, will not need to hide or explain. There will be peace between our peoples, real and lasting peace. And it will start with families like ours, with love that crosses boundaries and builds bridges." "I believe you," Isaac said, and kissed her temple. "And I am grateful every day that an orc woman chose a farmer instead of anything else. You changed my life, Grisha. You made it worth living." "You saved mine," Grisha replied. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. How can I do anything but love you?" They sat together as the stars came out, a family bound not by blood alone but by choice and commitment and the kind of love that endures. The farm spread around them, the crops swaying gently in the evening breeze, the animals settled in the barn, everything peaceful and good. Grisha thought sometimes about the warband she had left behind, about the soldiers who had hunted her, about all the ways her life could have ended on that desperate day when she stumbled out of the forest onto Isaac's land. She thought about the courage it had taken for him to hide her, the trust it had taken for her to stay, the love it had taken for them to build this life together. She thought about the future, about Alina growing up and maybe having children of her own someday, about the world changing slowly but surely, about peace spreading like ripples in a pond. She thought about the home they had made here on the frontier, a place where an orc woman and a human man could love each other openly, where their child could run free and laugh without fear. And she thought that maybe, just maybe, they had helped change the world a little bit. Not through war or politics or grand gestures, but through the simple act of choosing love over hatred, of choosing each other when the whole world said they should not. The war between their peoples had ended with a treaty, but the real peace, the lasting peace, would be built by families like theirs, by people willing to see past differences to the common humanity beneath, by love that refused to be bounded by the color of skin or the shape of ears or the prejudices of the past. Grisha looked at her husband and daughter, at the life they had built together, and felt complete. She had been a warrior once, had faced death and despair, and the complete destruction of everything she knew. But she had survived, had found something better than she had ever imagined possible, and she would spend the rest of her life being grateful for the human who had hidden her in his root cellar and given her a home. "I love you," she whispered to Isaac, the words as true as they had been the first time she said them, as true as they would be every day for the rest of their lives. "I love you too," Isaac replied, his arm tightening around her. "Always and forever." Elena, drowsing between them, made a soft sound of contentment, and Grisha smiled. This was her army now, this tiny force of three. They would stand together against whatever challenges came, would face the future side by side, bound by love and commitment, and the choice they had made to build a life together. The stars wheeled overhead, the seasons turned, and on a small farm on the frontier, an orc woman and a human man and their extraordinary daughter lived and loved and thrived. They were proof that peace was possible, that love could conquer hate, that the barriers between peoples were imaginary and could be overcome by those brave enough to try. And they lived happily, fully, completely, in the life they had chosen and the family they had created. Together they had found what so many searched for and never found: a place to belong, a purpose worth living for, and a love that would endure through all the years to come. The farm prospered, Elena grew, and Grisha and Isaac grew old together, their love only deepening with time. And every evening, as the sun set over the golden fields, they would sit together on their porch and watch the world turn beautiful in the fading light, grateful for every moment they had been given, for every choice that had led them to this place, for the miracle of having found each other in a world that tried so hard to keep them apart. Their story became a legend in the area, whispered about in taverns and told around fires. The veteran farmer who had married the strange woman from the swamps, and their remarkable daughter who could outwork any man in the fields. Some people guessed the truth or part of it, but no one spoke it aloud. It did not matter anymore. They were simply the Yardley family, good neighbors, hard workers, people who kept to themselves but were always ready to help when needed. And sometimes, on quiet nights when Elena was asleep and the house was still, Grisha and Isaac would talk about the day they met, about the choice they made to trust each other, about how a single act of kindness had changed both their lives forever. "You ever regret it?" Grisha asked once, years into their marriage. "Hiding me, risking everything?" Isaac pulled her close and kissed her deeply before answering. "Never, not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. Even knowing all the challenges, all the difficulties, especially knowing them, because they were worth it, you were worth it, we were worth it." He smiled, that warm smile that still made her heart skip. "I was surviving before you came, but you taught me how to live." Grisha rested her head on his shoulder, content. "And you taught me what it means to truly belong somewhere, to be seen and accepted for who I am, to be loved without conditions or expectations." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had chosen love when the world demanded they choose sides, who had built something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of war and the promise of peace. The future stretched before them, uncertain but hopeful. Elena would grow up, would make her own choices, would forge her own path in a world that was slowly changing. More children of mixed heritage would be born as the peace held and humans and orcs began to cautiously interact. The barriers between their peoples would erode, slowly but surely, as more people chose love over fear. And it had all started here, on a small farm on the frontier, when an orc woman fleeing for her life stumbled out of the forest, and a human farmer made the choice to hide her instead of turn her in. When two people from different worlds decided that their differences were less important than their common humanity, and that love was stronger than any law or prejudice or ancient hatred. They had chosen each other, and in doing so, they had chosen hope. Hope for themselves, hope for their daughter, hope for a world where such choices would become easier and more common with each passing generation. Hope that someday, the things that divided people would matter less than the things that united them. And as the years passed and their hair turned gray, and their daughter grew into a strong, capable young woman who made them proud every single day, Grisha and Isaac knew with absolute certainty that they had made the right choice. That the life they had built together was worth every risk, every challenge, every moment of fear and uncertainty. They had found what mattered most: love, family, home, and peace. And they had found it by reaching across the divide that separated their peoples, by choosing to see each other as individuals rather than enemies, by having the courage to love when the world said they should hate. In the end, that was all that mattered. They had loved, and they had been loved in return, and they had created a family that would carry that love forward into the future. They had proven that peace was possible, that differences could be celebrated rather than feared, that the things that united people were stronger than the things that divided them. And they lived the rest of their lives in the home they had built together, surrounded by love and laughter and the fruits of their labor, content in the knowledge that they had made the world a little bit better simply by choosing each other. The orc woman who had been hunted and the human farmer who had hidden her, united by chance and choice, and a love that transcended every boundary that should have kept them apart. Their story was one of hope and healing, of bridges built and barriers broken, of two people who refused to let the world define what they could be to each other. And it all began on a desperate day when Grisha stumbled out of the forest, when Isaac opened his door, and when both of them made the choice to trust, and to hope, and to love. That choice echoed through the years that followed, through their daughter and eventually their grandchildren, through the slowly improving relations between humans and orcs, through every small act of kindness and understanding that their example inspired in others. They never sought recognition or fame, never wanted to be seen as heroes or pioneers. They simply wanted to live their lives in peace, to love each other, to raise their family. But in doing so, they changed the world. One farm, one family, one love story at a time. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The sun continued to set over their fields each evening, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson and purple. The seasons turned, the crops grew, and life continued in its beautiful, mundane way. And through it all, Grisha and Isaac walked side by side, hand in hand, partners in every sense of the word. They had been caught between a human army and an orc warband, between two worlds at war, between hatred and fear. And the orc woman had chosen the farmer instead. Chosen peace over war, love over hatred, hope over despair. And that choice had made all the difference.